Welcome to Hungarian Insights, your go-to channel for exploring Hungary's rich history, vibrant culture, and language learning resources. In this episode, we uncover Hungary's difficult path through World War II, from the scars of the Treaty of Trianon to its alliance with Nazi Germany, the horrors of war, and the devastation of Soviet occupation. How did past wounds shape these fateful choices? Let's dive in.
All right, getting right into it. Today, we're going deep. Hungary during World War II. I mean, most people know the basics, but there's so much more to it. Like, how did their past, influence the choices they made during the war?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's all about the echoes of history. For Hungary, I think you got to start with the Treaty of Trianon after World War I. That really left a mark.
Okay, so, like, what made this treaty so impactful?
Well, imagine, picture this. It's 1920 and bam, your country loses over 70% of its land. Gone. Poof. Two-thirds of the population also gone. That was Hungary.
Wow.
The Treaty of Trianon basically redrew the map of Europe and left Hungary with, this feeling of being totally humiliated. They wanted that land back. And that feeling really stuck with them.
I bet. So how did they handle this new reality?
Not well. Things were politically really unstable. The economy was rough, and right-wing groups started gaining power. They tapped into that resentment from the treaty.
Yeah. And this is where Miklos Horthy comes in, right?
Exactly. Horthy, he was an admiral, became the regent of Hungary in 1920. Not exactly a democracy, though. It was authoritarian, really focused on restoring national pride. And for Horthy, that meant getting back what they lost in the treaty, no matter what.
Okay, so we've got national humiliation, a desire for past glory, and then how do they end up aligning with Nazi Germany?
Well, when the Nazis came to power, it looked like an opportunity. Both Hungary and Germany, they had issues with, how things ended up after World War I. So they kind of found common ground in hating the Treaty of Trianon.
Wow. It's like all these things coming together at the worst possible time. And of course, we know this alliance ended up being disastrous.
Oh, yeah, big time. They officially joined the Axis powers in 1941, and it was just a terrible decision for Hungary. It meant getting even more involved in the war, and it led to a lot of suffering, a really dark chapter.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just a war itself, right? This alliance, it really hurt Hungary's Jewish population.
You're right, it's true. The Holocaust, the persecution of the Hungarian Jews under the Nazis, it was systematic, brutal. I mean, it wiped out a whole community. And the impact is still felt today. A real reminder of what happened when extremist ideologies get a foothold.
Yeah, it's hard to even think about. So while all this is going on, Hungary becomes a battleground itself. What about the siege of Budapest?
Well, in 1944, as the Soviet army moved in, Hungary was right in their way. The siege of Budapest, it was brutal. Weeks of fighting, the city was destroyed, tons of casualties on both sides.
So going from wanting to reclaim their glory, they end up devastated and occupied.
It just goes to show how quickly things can change during war, how easily wanting national power can lead to destruction and suffering.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, from the Treaty of Trianon to allying with the Nazis to the devastation of the war. It's heavy stuff. Where do we go from here?
Well, the war ended, but Hungary wasn't exactly free. They ended up under Soviet control, and, well, that's a whole other story with its own challenges. But for now, I think it's important to just sit with how devastating this period was for Hungary, how it shaped their future.
We've been talking about, like, the big events, the treaties, the alliances, the battles. But what about the everyday people in Hungary? What was it like for them?
Right, you can't forget about them. Behind all the big events, there are so many individual stories. How they survived, how they adapted, the tough choices they had to make.
So, like, how did ordinary people get through all this?
Well, just surviving was hard. Rationing was everywhere. Food, clothes, fuel, it was all in short supply. And, air raids were a constant threat. It was a scary time.
I can imagine. And I guess it didn't affect everyone equally, right? Some groups must have had it even worse.
Yeah, sadly. I mean, we talked about the Holocaust, but for Hungarian Jews, things got really bad as the war went on.
We did, yeah. But I think we need to, like, really understand what happened to them.
It was awful. The Nazis, and unfortunately some Hungarians too, they went after the Jews systematically, stripped them of their rights, their homes, everything. And in the end, well, they murdered them.
Just chill. How could a society do something like that? Was there, like, any resistance? Anyone who tries to stop it?
There were people, and it's important to remember them. Some diplomats, they risk everything to give Jews fake passports so they could escape. Families hid Jews in their homes, gave them a place to stay when it was so dangerous, and some people even fought back, formed resistance groups.
Wow, those stories are incredible. I mean, they couldn't stop everything, but they still tried to do something.
They did, and every little bit helped. They saved lives, and I think they gave people hope in a really dark time. It shows that even when things are terrible, people can still be good.
Yeah, it's like a reminder that history isn't just the big events. It's about what people choose to do, even when it's hard.
Exactly. Every act of kindness, every time someone stood up for what was right, it mattered.
So as we, move on to what happened after the war, it's important to remember how much this all cost. For everyone, those who died and those who survived. Rebuilding a country, it's not just about buildings, right?
No, it's about people, too. Their lives, their spirit. And that's what we'll talk about next, how Hungary put itself back together, what it was like to live in the post-war world.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, right? The Treaty of Trianon, the war, the devastation. But in 1945, when it was finally over, what happened to Hungary? Did things, get better?
Well, not really. I mean, the Nazis were gone, but then the Soviets came in.
Oh, wow. So it's like out of one bad situation and into another.
Yeah, pretty much. The Soviets, they had a lot of power in Eastern Europe after the war. And Hungary, well, it became part of their sphere of influence. By 1949, it was officially a people's republic, basically a communist country.
So for people living in Hungary, what did that actually mean? Like, how did things change?
Well, freedom was definitely limited, just like during the war. The Communist Party controlled everything. They censored the press, no free speech, even art was controlled. If you spoke out against them, bad things happened.
That sounds pretty oppressive. Was there any pushback? Did people try to resist?
There was some resistance, yeah, but it had to be subtle. Artists and writers, for example, they found ways to criticize the government in their work without, getting in trouble. And then, of course, there was the Hungarian Revolution in 1956.
Oh, right, the revolution. What was that all about?
People were fed up, the economy was struggling, there was no freedom, and they wanted the Soviets out. It started with student protests, but it quickly spread across the whole country. People were demanding democracy, basically.
It must have felt like hopeful, at least at first.
Yeah, definitely. For a little while, it seemed like things might actually change. People fought really hard against the Soviet military.
But it didn't work out, right? What happened?
The Soviets crushed it. They weren't going to let go of Hungary that easily. Thousands of people died, and a lot more were arrested or had to flee the country.
It's a shame it ended that way. But even though they lost, did it have any impact?
Absolutely. I mean, it became a symbol of, Hungarian resistance. People never forgot what those revolutionaries fought for. Freedom and independence. Even after it was over, it inspired people to keep pushing for change.
So from the aftermath of the war to the revolution, Hungary's journey is, well, it's pretty intense. Where did it all lead?
Well, things started changing in 1989. The Berlin Wall fell, and that was the beginning of the end for communism in Europe. Hungary saw a chance to break free from Soviet control and, become a democracy again. And they took it.
After everything they went through, that's amazing.
Yeah, they held free elections, joined NATO and the European Union. It took a long time, and it wasn't easy, but they finally got there. It's a pretty inspiring story, from all that darkness to becoming a free country again.
Wow. It really makes you think about, how strong people can be, how a country can rebuild itself after so much suffering. And it makes you wonder, what do we learn from their experience? What does it teach us about, dealing with challenges in our own world? Something to think about, I guess.
Definitely. There's always something to learn from history. Twas.
Our podcast discussions are based on our eBook, Hungary's Hall of Fame in a Nutshell. History, literature, art, music, science, sport. Scan the QR code or check the link in the description to download your copy of Hungary's Hall of Fame in a Nutshell. As a special bonus, you'll also receive the Illustrated Companion, featuring over 100 detailed illustrations to visually enrich your understanding of the book's content. Thank you for watching.